Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is entitled Mom Confronts Me for Have the Audacity to Buy Our House When Her Son Wanted It. Brief backstory. Back in March I, 25 female, and my partner, 27 male, bought a house. Big deal for us, and we're so glad we managed to pull this off, especially right before the pandemic got bad. It's a livable fixer-upper. The lady that lived here bought it in 67 and was the only owner before us, and she made no updates in that time law. It keeps us busy and that's worked out really well being home so often. Now to the event with M. In May my big project was pulling out some nasty bushes that had taken over a huge chunk of the front side yard. It was hot. I was sweaty. I'm digging out roots and throwing branches. As I'm right up front and making a pretty drastic change to the yard, people notice. Most neighbors stop by, say a quick hello from the car, and drive away. But not M. M pulls up in a shiny black Suburban from the opposite side of the road, parks the wrong way, and rolls down her window. I'd say she's in her 50s to 60s. Gray, white bob cut hair. I stand up and pause my music. The following conversation isn't exact, but pretty close as this conversation was just Sue. Entitled. M. Hey, did you buy this house? Me. Yep, just moved in last month. M. Did you know the family? Me. That sold it? Not really, we just got lucky, they chose us I guess, haha. Trying to be nice, but kind of off-put, she's asked none of the typical neighbor questions. We made a great offer. M. Yeah, my son really wanted this house. He grew up in this neighborhood, you know. Me. Oh, darn. Yeah, houses move fast right now. M. He spent his whole life in this area. He really deserved to stay in the neighborhood, you know. Me. Yeah, that's too bad. Major WTF feelings now. M. How much did you offer? Me. Not about to tell her details. Over asking price. We were proactive, haha. M. Well, my son really wanted that house. Me. Feeling quite awkward with this whole situation, and just looking to shoo this lady along. Yeah, well, I'm sure more houses will go up for sale around here. M. Well, that doesn't help him now, does it? He had his heart set on that house. I just exaggeratedly shrug and decide to resume my root cutting to try and give her the message. M. You're probably flipping it. He would have loved it. Me. No we're not. We are staying long term. M. Yeah right, she doesn't leave. I'm wondering if I should go inside or something. She just keeps looking at me expecting me to say something. I keep cutting at a root. M. Is it just you or did your family help you get it? Me. Getting pretty short in tone. My partner and I bought it together. M. My grandkids would have loved the yard. A loved yard makes a house a home, you know. Me. Not looking up. Well, my dogs will love it. Especially once I'm done. M. Seriously? I just scoff. Pull my root out, throw it on the pile. I feel her eyes watching me. Me. Really ready to be done. Well, have a good day. Then, with a last glare and an she speeds off. Leaving a quite annoyed and bewildered me in my dirty glory, mulling over what the heck just happened. Did this freaking lady just try to guilt trip me because we bought a house her son wanted? Indeed, apparently. WTF. Definitely the most unwelcoming interaction I have had since we've moved in. And I have not seen her since. The next story is titled, How I Caught My Neighbor from Hell Committing a Federal Crime Against Me. I've been hoping for a long time that I'd be able to write a story like this, and it finally happened. There's a lot of backstory in this post. If you don't want to read it all, I suggest you do. It makes the revenge sweeter. You can just scroll down to the revenge paragraph. Almost 3 years ago now, me female, 32, my boyfriend male, 32, and our son male, 6, moved into a third-floor apartment. It was at the start of the pandemic, and we were hoping to not be here for long. Shortly after we moved, rents in the area started skyrocketing, which left us with not many options. We lived above an older couple in their 50s who seemed like nice people at the beginning but ended up turning into the neighbors from hell. We will call him NFH because we hardly had interaction with the wife. The very first time we met him he told us how he was a Marine vet. He was one of those people that made being a veteran his whole personality and would try to use it to make him seem more credible later on. We gave them our number shortly after moving in and told them to text us if our son, who was 3/4 of a year old at the time, was ever being too loud. It's an old 3-story house and we did what we could to keep the noise at an acceptable level by not letting him act like an animal inside the house. One day, a few months after we moved in, we got a reply to a group text message that included our landlords and all the tenants in the building. It was NFH. He thought he was sending a private text between him and the landlords and went on this huge rant about how since the moment we moved in, we have been so loud and stomped so much, that he had pictures falling off his wall, and even his smoke detectors fall out of his ceiling that very morning from my son running and jumping. I found this very interesting as all my son had done that morning was get up and walk to the couch to watch TV. My landlord informed him he was in a group text, and he was super embarrassed. My boyfriend decided to nicely approach him after and let him know that he could let us know about any issues and that we wouldn't be angry at him. I was of the opinion that this guy was an absolute snake. The landlords would go on to contact us many more times regarding his complaints, which were either exaggerated or outright lies. There were some other issues he was involved in with some other tenants. It took us all a while to figure out, but he was basically going from person to person, trying to pit us all against one another and fight. It almost worked for a little while, but we ended up figuring it out. Shortly before we had moved in, we found out he had just gotten out of jail for DUI, domestic violence. He had a breathalyzer in his car. While he had the breathalyzer in his car, they weren't drinking. As soon as it was taken out, things got worse. They started drinking and fighting almost every single day. Actually, I won't call it fighting. It was just him verbally abusing her. Loudly. Now, having been in an abusive relationship myself in the past, I felt sorry for his wife. Other people could hear what was going on, but nobody ever called the police when it would get bad. So, the next time he started to scream, and things sounded physical, I called. I would live to regret that for a while. Every time the police would show up, they would come up to talk to me afterwards and insinuate that I was overreacting for calling them. That when they went in, the couple was happily sitting on their couch watching TV and there was no fight. It would also make me the main target of NFH. Now, it took us a while to figure out how he knew the police were coming, but he had a police scanner he would listen to every time he was loud enough to suspect that people might call. And he had his wife so scared of him that she would pretend everything was fine when the police got there. He had beaten her in public once before and gone to jail for it. He blamed her for sending him to jail, and made sure she wouldn't say anything to incriminate him when the police would come. So, for a while, the police basically thought that I was the crazy one, because he would set everything up before they came. Once we figured out he had the scanner, I started telling the dispatcher and they would send the police over without announcing it on the scanner. Boy, was he mad those times. So, I started to slowly get the police to see that I wasn't crazy. This guy was just insanely calculating and sneaky. There are 2 buildings here, each with 3 units, and we all have a shared yard. The houses are close to one another, and everybody knew what was going on in their house. Half of the people who live here had young kids, and we would sometimes have trouble putting our kids to sleep, or even have them wake up because of the NFH's constant yelling. I guess the way he saw it, everyone was supposed to tiptoe around him, but he doesn't have to respect anybody else. He would drive drunk too, and one day, he came flying into the shared parking lot angry over something and almost hit the 3 young kids that live here, my son included. I was at work at the time, but the other 2 moms were pissed and called the police on him. He changed his attitude once he saw they were calling the cops on him and ended up actually crying to get them to not have the police come. We would all regret not getting him in trouble then, because he was driving drunk at the time, and he would become angry with all of us that we didn't want our kids to get run over. He started harassing me via text, to the point where I had to go to the local court and get a harassment order on him. He thought our AC unit was leaking into his wall. It wasn't, and was confirmed by 2 contractors. We were also all complaining to the landlords about the unsafe, toxic environment he was forcing everyone to live in. He started to get paranoid that we were all trying to mess with his car, break into his house, and started putting up cameras everywhere. Funnily enough, we all started having mysterious car problems around this time. He kind of followed the harassment order but would do anything he could to make sure we knew he hated us. For example, if we walked up to our apartment past his door, he would slam his door over and over again after we walked by. It would shake the whole house and scared the crap out of my kid. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything we could do about it. Even though there were so many times I wanted to retaliate, or let my kid do whatever he wanted inside the house, my boyfriend would remind me that we could still be decent people and karma would get him eventually. The landlords told him he needed to leave but just had a verbal agreement with him. Shortly after, he fell on some ice in the parking lot and sued the landlords. He had been talking about how someone was going to fall because they didn't supply enough ice melt for his liking. Everyone thought he did it on purpose. The landlords were afraid he would sue for discrimination if they proceeded with an actual eviction, so they pretty much lied to everyone and told us he would be leaving soon. It took 2 years for him to actually be evicted. When the proceedings started, he really ramped up the bullshit against us. It got to the point where we installed a camera in our own house, because he would call the police on us saying we were having domestic disputes. We would show the police our camera footage, and they would realize even more that he was nuts. They would also go on to say that he was being a real pain in the ass for them and would call the station almost daily complaining for one thing or another. They continued to get drunk every night, and his wife who had back and hip issues would fall constantly. We had ambulances outside 2 to 3 times a week because he would call to have them come put her back on the couch. Allegedly he hurt his elbow so badly falling on the ice that he couldn't help her up even though she weighs 120 pounds. And he's about 6 feet 3. We think he thought this would help prove his court case because even though he had cameras pointed everywhere, there was no footage of his fall. Strange. The floors are thin here, and I could hear everything he would yell about when he was drunk. He has said some awful things about setting the building on fire and trapping us inside, shooting us, having my son kidnapped, etc. He doesn't work and pretty much all of his time is spent on talking about how much he hates us and abusing his wife. I went down to the station and asked the police if there was anything they could do, but they said that since he wasn't making the threats directly to us, and he was saying it inside his own house, they couldn't do anything about it. It was scary sometimes not knowing if he might actually act on all the awful things he would say. He also made a false CPS report against us, saying we were hitting, abusing our son. This was the thing that made me the most angry. Luckily CPS and the police saw right through it, and we weren't even investigated. It's just such an evil thing to try to do to someone. Thanks to our cameras we were able to show that the alleged abuse never happened. Now for the revenge. We all have shared storage in the basement. In the past 6 months or so, now that he couldn't stall the eviction process, as he had lost his court case against the landlords for his fall on the ice, he started trying to find more ways to mess with us. In his eyes it was our fault that they were being evicted and had nothing to do with his actions. My boyfriend would store some of his work tools in the basement, and thought he was losing tools. Every month or two, something new would go missing and he would be looking everywhere for it. Recently I asked to borrow his multimeter. He had just used it and knew exactly where it was in the basement. He went down to get it for me, and it was gone. He noticed the bulkhead wasn't closed right and remembered seeing NFH come up from the basement a few times and never shut it right. So, he told me he suspected him of stealing. We decided to get some cameras and take this fucker down. My son's 6th birthday was this month too. His grandmother who lives in another state told me she was sending him a birthday card in the mail with $20 in it. I saw it come in our mailbox but couldn't grab it at the time because my hands were full. Later in the day when I went to get it, all the other mail was there, but no birthday card. I knew NFH probably took it. So, when our camera came in the mail, we set it up on the porch to see if he was going through our stuff. Sure enough, not even 12 hours after it was installed, we caught him going through our mail. I decided to put some bait in. Something I knew he wouldn't be able to resist taking. So, I found an old envelope that I had gotten from the local court. Inside I put a note that said, "Hey, NFH. Did you know stealing mail is a federal offense?" He took it. I got him on camera clear as day. The police were pumped about that video after seeing everything he had put us through. So, he is being charged at the state level just for larceny, but the police are sending everything over to the postal inspector and he will have federal charges filed against him too. It was really funny seeing him come out of the house the next day looking around for the camera after he got called into the police station and was shown the footage. And the day before yesterday, I got a little cherry on top. Him and his wife like to sit out on their porch and talk shit about everyone while they get drunk. He must not have realized how close he is to my camera as they sit directly above it. 2 of my other neighbors got into a small verbal altercation over a parking spot. I tuned into my camera and was recording all the shit he was talking. He then called the police. I texted my neighbor to let her know that NFH had called the police on her boyfriend. After they came and left, because everything was fine. The guy NFH had called on opened his window and confronted NFH asking why he would do that. Before we moved in, these people had taken care of NFH wife while he was in jail for beating her. NFH said I called. Man, did I have fun with that. So basically me, and 2 other neighbors roasted him yelling out our windows at him for about 5 minutes while he denied everything. It was really nice to get to tell him he wasn't the only one with the cameras now, and all his lies were catching up with him. He was completely humiliated in front of everyone. In the next 2 weeks that he still lives here, I now just enjoy watching him seething as he walks past my camera to go into his house. Isn't it funny how the type of people who will have 6 cameras outside their house hate to be on someone else's camera? I will be calling the local PD tomorrow to see how things are going with the postal inspector. Everyone says that they don't play with mail theft, and I hope they're right. If anyone has any stories or knows anyone who got in trouble for mail theft before, I'd love to hear them. And if you stuck through this long-ass story, thanks. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for listening.